Good morning, everyone. Welcome. This is Angela Coulter and
Sarah Sieg, Avignoni.
bringing you this week's Ascended World. That's all I'm starting with is my sigh.
Right.
Good
Morning,
morning.
Sandra.
Yeah, good morning, Sandra. So where should we start, shall we?
Let's just dive right in, shall we?
Well, okay. To back up to our topic as we have put it up there. I mean, of course, other stuff comes up, right?
Right, as always.
Yeah. So this week in our household is my kids' birthdays, right? They're not kids anymore, right? They're adults. So they call it birthday week though. And I always say it's very leonine of them because they're, the August 1st comes and they're like, it's birthday month. It's not just,
Right.
And so, there's nothing wrong with that, right? Nothing wrong with that. But I'll tell you, everything ends up starting to be, centered around them. And as adults, it still happens, right?
Yeah. And I was actually thinking about that because my kids don't live at home, and it's like, and two are even out of state, and it's very different than what you're experiencing.
Oh, right. Because we've got to have a certain cake, we've got to have a certain dinner, and it's not that it's bad. Like I said, I don't mind it because it's their day. And I always tell people to take their personal holiday. That's what their birthday should be, is their personal holiday.
Right.
Except it's going to be like a family holiday.
Right. Well, and my kids' significant others are responsible for
Right.
that.
Right.
It's not on me.
Right. So anyway, and that's even not the point. The point is that we don't realize how many things we do on behalf of other people.
Right.
I mean, that's what we're just diving right into, right?
Right.
And that's
and it's not a question of it with firmer boundaries.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. You froze up for a second. Did I freeze
Yeah.
up?
You froze up. Yeah, so I was sitting there listening. Now you're back though. Obviously, we're agitated this morning.
I know. Smooth that out.
Yeah. So go ahead, repeat yourself, I think, because I think you
So
froze
it's
up.
not a question of just coming up with firmer boundaries. Because
No.
that's a limitation.
Right. Right. And but we don't think of it that way. We think, okay, set boundaries, which is a line, right?
Right.
But and I'm not even talking about I'm not even talking about my kids' birthdays because, like I said, I'm pretty happy with letting them have their thing. But it was just a good place to start because, we don't realize how much we give to those around us, right?
Right.
And we think, and we talk about boundaries, right? We talk about boundaries in context of spirituality and consciousness, and I've got to set boundaries and everything else. Well, boundary is a line, and that's always bothered me because a line is a separation.
Right. And it's almost like a protection.
Right.
Which we talk about, not needing that protection.
Right. And so, when we talk about space, right? So in Trinity, what do we talk about when we talk about setting your space? We say no bubbles, no shields.
Right.
It's all simply holding your space to say, this is my vibration and everything is welcome as long as it matches my vibration or higher. Right.
Exactly.
And so there's a parameter, but there's not a boundary.
Right. And it's like a limitation, but it's an inherent limitation that's only a limitation to those who don't receive it, if that makes sense. It's not, it's not determined who you let in or not. They determine that.
Right.
So it's a choice, which I think is totally different than a bubble or a shield or a wall or a line or.
Right. Because it's not like it's not like a brick wall that you're putting up. It's you're welcome and here are my parameters.
Right. And you know, the way I look at that is that it is simply the essence of your authenticity that you're holding.
Mhm.
And in that case, it's to do anything other than that, it is not in alignment with that authenticity.
Right. Right. And so now, like, and it's funny because we can talk about that space thing, but then we're doing boundaries all the time.
Right.
And we're
Right.
not doing that authenticity. We're doing, I will go to here. And like, it's funny how what you had said when we were talking last week about how, you know, we are taught that compromise is optimal. Right.
Right.
And
And
you're
essentially no one's happy.
right. Right. That's what you said. You've always looked at compromises. Nobody's happy when they walk away.
Right. Right. Because everybody had to give something, had to give up something.
Sacrifice something. Right.
Right.
And
Right.
so, you know, the reality is we can change that. We can change that idea of what we're doing. And that's a very careful thing for us to step through, though, because it's a matter of not being in the ego with it, right? But being
Exactly.
in presence with it to say, so this is my authenticity, like you said, right?
Right.
This is who I am. And you can choose to take it or leave it.
Right. And it's much easier to meet someone that's in their authenticity.
Right.
And I think that that's when you come together and you make a connection in that place of authenticity, that it makes that compromise not a giving away.
Right. And it's, yeah. So then it becomes this going, okay, so this is where I am. Good morning, Sandy. So this is where I am. This is who I am, right? In my authenticity. And you can take it or
Right.
leave it, right? So, and it's not saying I am allowed to be all of who I am and you're not allowed to be all of who you are. What I'm saying is, in all of who you are, can you take all of who I am in the space? And, you know, and can we find that place of connection and connectivity without that compromise and truly just be
Which
able
I think that's the game changer right there.
yeah, totally. And we're so unused to doing that. We just it's such a habit for us to just say, oh, well, I'll just do this to make him happy, to make her happy. I'll do this.
Right. Or to keep the peace. Or
And we don't even think that consciously. It's like very subtle. I'm doing this to make my child happy, to make my spouse happy, to make my family happy, my friends or whatever. And that makes me feel good. Like people say that, oh, well, that makes me feel good to make you happy.
Well, and it's very, the way I look at it is it's very, oh gosh, all I can think of right offhand is it's that Pavlovian training. It's conditioning.
Right.
And that it requires no thought.
Right.
It's just where we go and what we do. And it's so interwoven into who we believe we are.
Mm-hmm. Sandy said that's good. I guess, yeah, we're saying about like meeting each other. Yeah. It is woven into who we are. And from like the beginning, you know, as children, oh, well, you know, make mommy happy, make daddy happy.
Right.
You know, be a good girl, be a good boy, you know, to make everybody else happy with how you behave.
Right.
Instead of, well, who are you? Who are you? What is your authenticity? And how do we fit that together with our authenticity? Like that's so freeing and liberating versus
It really is. It really is. And it's the fact that children aren't raised that way and that society doesn't function that way just tells you that authenticity just isn't a priority.
right.
That what's the priority is go along to get along, you know, make your way in the world, make money, and you know, and it's just like
yeah. And what's been hitting us in the
direction.
What's been hitting both of us in the face over the past week has been like one compromise, like one demanded compromise after another. Right.
Right.
And I
Right.
found after about the third one, I was like, F that.
Not happening. I'm not
It just,
participating in that.
it feels so inauthentic to do that
Right.
now, right?
Right.
Because it's like, you know, why would I do that? Why would I give up this for that? Why would I give up this so you're happy? And you don't have to look at your trigger, by the way.
Exactly. Exactly. Which does them the ultimate disservice,
Mhm.
because the whole set of circumstances are there to not necessarily for you, but for them. And by you compromising you, it just shortchanges them on what they need to do. So
Right.
then it needs to ramp up and
Yes.
get louder and uglier and
Right.
more demanding.
And that's why what's our commitment is like to not have to do that anymore, to get the little pings instead of like having to be the
Right.
smacks on the head, right? Or
Right.
worse. But you know, it was just like everywhere I turned last week, it was like, you know, like like even down to, you know, talking about like doing stuff to accommodate other people's, you know, issues, right, all the time. And I'm like, it even got to my mother who, you know, once a month we have her over for brunch on Sunday, right? And it was like, okay, well, I had said, come over for brunch on Sunday. This is the first Sunday. Like we've had a very busy month. This is the first Sunday for like a little more than a
Right.
month since we had it. So, okay, blah, blah, blah. Then I call her Saturday. I'm like, okay, so brunch is at 11 tomorrow, right? And her response is, so if I come there for now, mind you, it's a 25-minute drive for her. It's not 3 hours or anything. It's 25 minutes. So if I come there tomorrow, do I not have to, can I, you know, just bring the girls presents and not come for their birthdays? And I was like, well, that's your choice, but why would you do that? It's your grandkids' birthdays and you're not really doing anything right now.
Right. Right.
Well, then I have to come out 3 times. And I'm not doing this to complain about that. It's just that, and then it was like, well, then what time are you doing cake on their birthdays? Because I don't want to be there, you know, too late when it gets dark. Like, and it's like all these parameters. And I'm like, okay, well, this is when we're probably going to do it. You can come or not. That's your choice. You can explain that to your grandkids. I'm not doing it because they're adults and you can deal with them directly.
Right.
And you can
Right.
come for brunch or not. And that's your choice too. And that's what I finally said was, you can come for brunch or not. That's your choice. We'll have it here. We'll be here at 11. You can be here or not.
Right.
And I
And
was
that's holding that vibration. That's holding that vibration. And, you know, I guess in the past we might have said it's holding that line, but it's really more about the vibration that you hold
Mhm.
and more about, you know,
I've realized, and I'm not, like I said, I'm not doing this to just pick on my mother, but we do this with people in our families all the time. Like you start
Right.
to bend this way, you start to change this, start to change that. Like you were talking about, you know, somebody like who wants to come and do something with you daily, and that's fine, except then it's to their schedule versus yours. And then it's just like,
right. It goes from whenever it fits mine, and then it slowly turns into, well, but I need this. And then it's
right,
like all about I bend my schedule. And it's like, oh, here we are. I don't matter.
right, right. And so that's what we do when we start to, and we don't realize we do it. And it is so natural for us to do it with our immediate family, our closest friends, the people who we see all the time, you know. And it was interesting because we did for a long time, we would have my mother, instead of for brunch once a month, we would have her over for dinner every Sunday, right?
Mhm.
And then it turned into a hot mess every week because it was, I can't eat this. I can't eat this. It's too spicy. I can't eat this because of this. I don't like this. I don't like to eat this. And I was just like, well, fine. I will give you toast and butter and, you know, we'll eat, or you just don't have to come because I'm just not going to do this anymore. Because I got to the point where I hated Sundays because it was like, well, I don't know what to make because I've got to follow all these freaking parameters. Right.
Right.
And so like, I had several of those things come up last week where it was like, oh, well, I don't like this, or can you change this? And it was like, you know what?
No.
No, nope, and nope.
Right.
Once I sat in it and looked at it, and I was like, nope. this is where I stand. This is what's going on. And Sandy says rules smooths. Yeah, I know rules.
Right.
Exactly. It's like, oh, when it becomes like a pain when you're trying to like accommodate, like, have you ever seen somebody who's trying to do like a Thanksgiving dinner for like all these different people in their family? And it's like, oh, we have to do this for Aunt Mabel, and we have to do this for Uncle Tony, and we have to do this, and it's like, oh my God. And I mean, I have to do that when we do retreats because it's to accommodate people's, their diets while we're there, since I provide the food. Oh no, actually, I
Right.
don't provide food. When we
People-
provide the,
yeah. Right.
but well, I did at Glastonbury. That's what I was thinking about.
Yeah, that's different though.
But it's like, but we can all, but we have found a balance when we do these retreats, because we do usually all buy food together versus having it brought in, right? And so then we can usually pretty easily accommodate everybody by saying, okay, we'll just cook these things separately and people can just add them in together, like, right, whether it's meat or whatever. So we all get to be authentic in our own what we're doing, right? Versus, no, we all have to accommodate because of this person or these people or whatever. And it's fine for everybody to have their requirements. It's fine for everybody to be where they're at. That's the whole thing of not compromising. It's fine for you to be where you're at and not have to compromise where you are at.
Right. Yeah. And it's when your circumstances become a requirement of someone else.
Mhm.
And then that's the time when it's like, you do you and I do me.
Right.
And then you come together to find the common ground there.
Right. Right. Well, and we have had a lot of that in our household because we have both of our adult kids living at home, right? My oldest with her significant other, we have a basement apartment and they live down there. And then our 23-year-old lives in the bonus room, which is in the main part of the house. So the thing that is, when we want to do something together, it's like everybody, for a while it was like, oh, we've got to accommodate this schedule and we've got to accommodate this schedule. And then finally it was like, you know what, I'm going to do this. And either you can be there or not, or we'll do it a different day.
Right. Right.
It became so much simpler. And then I just stopped, we put so much worry and energy to making everybody happy around us, like making everybody accommodated and whatever. And it's like, you know what, I'm going to accommodate me in that authenticity. And I am sure welcome to expanding that, but I'm not open to limiting it. There's a difference.
Yeah, there's very much a difference. And I mean, the same could be said, just like in our forgiveness program, how we start with out and move then those concentric rings back into the middle. The same can be said for like, your interactions with the bigger picture. And then you get a smaller and others and the community and things like that, to where this isn't just about your family.
Right.
This is about work, where you work. It's about, I know I've had a lot of service work done around my house, and it's like, I find that I just have to write off the whole day because they'll get here when they want to. And it's like, that doesn't work for me anymore.
Mm-hmm.
That does not work for me anymore. And I won't use your services unless you can give me at least a window of when you'll be here. But it's not just family. It's not just friends.
Oh, right.
It overflows into everything.
Yeah, it does.
Everything.
Well, work is a big one, right?
Right. Yep. And I think that things have gotten more in your face with COVID, because things are, supply and demand is just wonky with, products and
right,
goods for if you need, I mean, I heard something like in the Dallas-Fort Worth area that there literally were no air conditioners.
Oh,
Zero.
really?
None to be purchased. And that the first availability was like November. And I mean,
oh, wow.
And it's one of those things where it's like, okay,
Of
so
August, dang.
yeah, so, well, and this was months ago that I heard that. So it's one of those things where it's just, everything is at that place where everybody, it serves you best to come to that place of that authenticity and know who you are before you get in those circumstances so that you can hold your vibration in the midst of all that.
Right. Right. So it's the same thing as what we're talking about in the beginning, as holding your space and allowing anything
Right.
to come in as long as it matches your vibration or higher. It's the same thing of holding your space in interactions with others, holding your authenticity, right? We can take space out and replace it with authenticity, holding your authenticity and not being, so not having the, so here's the thing, when you have, here's the fine line, when you have the idea of, well, my thing is more important than their thing, well, then the ego becomes a part of the play, right? As soon as you hear the more than,
Right.
it's that we're equally divine. We are equally important. We are equally, it's equally important. And yeah, it's equally important for us to all be in our authentic selves. And the thing is, if we started making decisions on, can we do this together and be authentic within ourselves? What a difference in our decisions.
Exactly.
I mean,
Then
even
we
in
don't-
relationships, period. What if we just walked into a relationship that way?
Right. The ego has no place. The ego has no place when we don't get into those uncomfortable situations to where it becomes that power struggle or the more than, less than. And it just sets the tone to be such a different vibration
Mhm.
through and through.
Yep. Yep. So, but that takes a lot of retraining, a lot of consciousness, a lot of
Right.
consciousness.
And on both sides.
Mhm. Oh, for everybody.
both sides.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And so how do you do that? Like, I know I can just hear that collectively as well. How do you do that in relationships where you haven't done it before? Right. That's
Right.
the challenge.
There's definitely a learning curve. And if you are not in a place of communicating well in that relationship already, that has to be one of the first shifts, is coming to that place of clear and concise communication. And that's quieting that ego,
Yep.
and just saying, no, this is not the place or time for you.
Yeah. Yeah. And we're not used to being in that. We're not used to being in that state of constant self-checking.
Right. Well, and that's when, and getting a shameless plug in here, is that's when the self-responsibility comes in. When you turn phrases around from saying, you make me feel like this, to when this happens, I feel like this, to
Yeah.
say it's my choice. And
Yeah. And
I'm
even further, actually, further, funny that, because I know we say that all the time, right? That it was something that someone I know who's a therapist said, right? They switched it around. They said, well, even better is to, instead of saying when this happens, I feel this way, is to say, I feel this way when this happens, because
Exactly.
it takes full responsibility. And I was like, oh, I never thought about that. Like, because we say that all the time, when this happens, I feel this, but that almost puts it like even a small weight on that situation, right?
Because you precipitated that happening.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
So if we switch it around and just say, well, I feel this way when this happens, it's like, well, I'm just taking it all. And I was like, you're right. I sort of felt into that. And I was like, yes, I can feel that difference here. Right.
Right. Yeah. And just that shift in conversation makes a huge difference. And it really takes the wind out of the ego sails.
Yeah.
And just puts it into more communication mode instead of blaming and shaming and guilt. And that's not communication.
It takes everything into the self. It takes full. And so the shameless plug, because you didn't get all the way to the plug, you just said self-responsibility, is next month we launch the fifth course of the Adventures in Wonderland, which is self-responsibility. So that was the shameless plug.
That was a shameless plug, right?
Like she started, I'm like,
complete
oh,
my
but you didn't
thought.
get to the course.
But that self-responsibility really does take the ego out of it
Yes, it does.
and say, you know what? No, it's all me. It's all me.
Yeah, and there's no blame. There's no pointing fingers. It just is, well, so when this happens, this is how I feel.
And that's
Or actually, this is how I feel when this happens. And I have to change that now. Like that's something I have to keep on thinking about, is like, because it even takes even the shadow of that little like pointer finger, you know?
Right, right. And what I've found with that is that when you're in the process of shifting around that way of communicating, is it's at times hard for the other person to get out of making it about them, because that's what the blame game does, is it justifies them turning it around and making it about them. Whereas when you're taking full responsibility, that's another learning curve of, well, how do I participate in a conversation where you are taking full responsibility?
Right,
What does that look like?
right. Right.
Yeah.
And it's funny because I think about that. And this morning I was triggered by something that was totally me. And I totally knew it was totally me, which I always do. But then, you know, sometimes it feels more me than, you know what I'm saying? You know what I mean?
Right.
And so, you know, I was walking with my husband and I was just like, yeah. And I was like, nope. And I just, I'm not sure why I feel this way. It's just, it's in my face and blah, blah, blah. And the whole thing was such a great conversation because I never like, it was a great conversation because though there were shades of things that involved my husband, he recognized that it was not on him at all. Right. And so he was so much more like suggestive in terms of, you know, like what I could not be looking, because I mean, and I totally said, I'm like, so I have to sit with this because I'm not sure what, you know, like I have to sit with this. And he's like, all right, well, so I'm just going to start throwing out things that come to me, because he's very intuitive too when he lets himself be, you know. So it was like, yeah. And so like being able to have that conversation, because he didn't shut down in the mind and the ego, because he wasn't going, what did I do? Is there something I could have done better? Is there something I could have
Right.
done that, you know, would have prevented this or whatever? It's like, no, well, how can I help? Or like, what kind of guidance can I get? And that's when I call him my one hit wonder, because when he opens up to that, it's like, oh, he usually can reflect back to me what I'm missing myself. Right. But you can't do that if you're sitting there going, well, why did she get mad at me? Like, what did I do wrong? Can I change it? Like, and that's what we do. That's what we do all the time. Even if we're not conscious of it, it's like in relationships all the time. How do I make her feel better? How do I make her do this? And instead it's like, okay, well, nope, there's no responsibility on me. I can just be like, you know, part of the conversation to support whatever it is to look at, right? Makes a completely different set of energies.
It does. It does. And that I have to admit takes practice in the beginning.
Oh,
And
takes
it
a lot of
takes
practice.
a lot of open conversations and a lot of wanting to say things and then thinking first.
Right. Well, or stepping back first, right? Before you say
Right. Because once it's out, you can't pull it back in.
pull back in.
Right.
Rewind.
Right. Do over.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it does take you're right. It takes a lot of practice. And this is in any relationship and everything we do, to even have that self-consciousness, you know.
Yeah. Laurel has a comment, rolling on the floor laughing. Intriguing topic. I had some person I don't know comment on Facebook post trying to shush me. It was fascinating, and all I did was suggest to ABC on a post that they add some action steps to protect the horse to protect the horses at Assateague. I had full response for this person prepared along the lines of, what are you talking about? And then I decided in this case to just say thank you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's the whole, yeah. And that's where we become very conscious about what the ego wants to say.
Right.
And that's, It is, and I tell people that all the time. When we say to speak in authenticity and to speak with love, right? So speaking with love and speaking with authenticity to me are the same thing, because you're doing it from
Exactly.
a place of self-responsibility, right? So when you do so from that place, it's speaking from a place of more expanded consciousness, because you're just speaking from a place of being, versus having to prove a point, having to prove yourself, having to prove
With no agenda.
yeah, there's no agenda. And it
Yeah,
takes
Sandra
a lot of practice.
says this is very helpful. It makes things come into perspective for me. Thank you.
Oh, good. I'm not getting any of these. I'm not getting any comments, so it must be your
Oh,
day.
I'm glad one of us is.
Yeah. So, and I'll tell you what, I mean, so I've been consciously, on my commitment to self work and consciousness for more than 12 years now. Right. So, and I still have to stop and observe all the time.
Right. Well, and I mean, I believe that instead of being a hierarchy of, getting, higher consciousness, is that our consciousness is just expanding and becoming and encompassing more of the bigger picture. And I think that everything that we've done was to the level that we were. Just like, you can only love at the level of your own self-love. The same with all of this that we talk about, and the more authentic we get, the more this evolves and expands, and it takes stepping into that observation and stepping back and being sitting with it instead of just pushing through.
And it's so much easier. Okay, so even though it's still challenging, it's still easier when we're typing it, right? Like Laurel's saying, like going to type a response or whatever, because then you stop. A lot of times we'll stop and read it back to ourselves, right? And then that's, I find easiest, because I'll be like, I can't tell you how many times I delete, like in Jane the Virgin, the show Jane the Virgin, that's what I love. One of the things I love about that show is how they show when people like start to text something and they text this whole
And then
thing.
they back up.
They just delete the whole thing and just go, okay.
Right.
Or what they
Right.
wanted to say was this, but this is what they said. And it's like, that's the thing of being conscious about it, going, you know what? That really doesn't serve the purpose. That doesn't serve any purpose here for me to say this, right? It's like, okay, let me just clear it out. Now, of course, it was a different kind of thing with Jane the Virgin most of the time. Sometimes it was funny in that it was like this whole
Right.
paragraph and then deleting, just like, okay.
Right.
And so so that's where our first steps tend to be, because it's easier for us to see it if we can catch ourselves, right, before hitting the send
Right.
button, whether it's
And
email
then
or
what
posting or texting or whatever.
what just occurred to me was, well, where's the spontaneity and all that? And it's like, it's essentially a remembering curve of getting back to that place of authenticity, to where the spontaneity stems from the authenticity, not the ego.
Well, right. And the other thing that's tied into that, because this actually ties in so many different things that we talk about, is, because I was talking about this weekend too. What I got into the habit of doing is asking guidance. What is there for me to say here? What is there for me to say here?
Right.
Is it for me to say this? Right. Sometimes guidance comes in to say something and the ego goes, oh, really? I'm not really comfortable saying that. So then I go, okay.
Not socially acceptable.
Right. But when you're committed to that place of love and authenticity, and also the other element to that is being committed to your guidance over your ego, right? Sometimes it's the other way, where you're saying something that would be uncomfortable to the ego to say, that you would maybe gloss over. And again, when we do that, sometimes that's losing our authenticity too, because we're not owning up to what's going on inside, right?
Exactly.
So sometimes,
Exactly. And that goes all the way back to what we started with, was, you're bending and shifting and sacrificing and compromising and, getting into forgiveness. You're abandoning yourself.
Yeah.
By doing things other than what is reflective in your authenticity.
Yeah. And I had, like I said, I had that happen so many times last week. It was just so in my face, like, are you going to do this? Are you going to back off? Are you going to move that line? Are you going to continue to move that line back? Or are you just going to stand strong in your authenticity of who you are? Right.
Right.
But part of it does tie into guidance, which is shameless plug. Course 3 in our program is
Right.
getting strong in your guidance. Here's the thing. That's how it ties back to this, because we always end up tying it back to guidance in some way, shape, or form, like in every episode here. Right. But
Right.
the whole thing is when we can trust that we have the answers, we can trust that we can stay in the heart and authenticity, and we can trust that guidance is going to give us the perfect path. Right.
Mhm.
Then you can stop and start asking. And that's what I do. I was having a conversation with my husband about overthinking things, which
Right.
is something he is working on getting past right now, right? Is overthinking. And
Right.
so he said, and he had told me something last week that I had never known, like it was a process of the way he thinks of stuff. And I said, you telling me that has made so many things clear about things that have perplexed me about you for years. And I'm so thankful that you told me this, because I just had no idea. And he's like, and he looked at me and he goes, so you don't do that? And I go, not
Right.
anymore. I said, not anymore.
Right.
And I said, and that's when I realized, I said, no, because I've gone through all of this of getting just smacked upside the head by expanded consciousness to say, no, follow your guidance, follow your guidance. The thinking is all ego and it is totally irrelevant. And if you follow your guidance and stay in the heart and stay in that authenticity, then you don't have to think about what you're going to say, because it just happens. It just happens and it's perfect.
Right.
And when you start to trust that more, then that observance process starts to shorten and clip off, because you don't need to think about it, because then you just don't have all of those things and explanations and justifications and rationalizations and compromises. You just say it. Like, it was funny, as this was in my face, like one of 50,000 conversations I've had in the past week. So Saturday, so my kids and my husband and some friends do D&D, because D&D is back in style now, right? People playing D&D. So they do this D&D group, and they were doing this thing Saturday night, which I was like, great, because we're working on getting all the forgiveness, recordings done. I'm like, great, I get like 4 hours of no interruptions, right? They play in the basement in my daughter's apartment. And so then they're, so I have the quiet and everything else. Well, then like an hour before they start, my daughter calls me and she goes, so would it be okay if we played in the main part of on the main floor tonight? And I right away, I was in the middle of making something or dinner or something, birthday cake or something. And I go, well, it's really not the best for me for you guys to do that, but if you must. And as I heard that come out of my mouth, I was like, what'd I just say? And so like we hung up, and then I called her back and I said, you know what? Nope, it's not okay. It's like I had to backtrack. And I was like, wow. And that's like, we do that all the time. Like, oh, well, yeah, it's sort of an inconvenience to me, but okay. Right.
I'll compromise
because, oh, it's your birthday week. I want to do something special. Da, 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 da. And then I was just like, no.
Right.
And there was, and then there was like a little bit of there's a little bit of huffiness, right? Because then there's the ego that comes up from, well, fine. And da, da, da. And I guess, well, it worked out fine. But it was, for me, because that's why I know they've just come up, those conversations just are coming up one after the other this past week to test me. Are you going to just stay authentic in that? Are you just going to stay authentic in that? Are you still going to stay authentic in that? Are you going to compromise it? Because it catches you unaware. We do it all the time.
Right.
And that's what happened. I was in the middle of doing one thing and my daughter called me and I was in the middle of doing it, like in the kitchen, and I'm talking to her on speaker. And then I was just like, wow, okay. Because I was more focused on what I was doing. And then I hung up and I like sat in it for a minute and I go, no, that's not okay. Yeah. Because I wanted to get these recordings done. So I have a lighter schedule this week. So my girls,
Right.
so I could spend more time with my girls on their birthdays. Right.
Right.
So,
Right.
and I had planned all this and da 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 da. And it was like, and I mean, that all just dumped in. It's like, why would you compromise this? Because now it'll screw everything else up because you can't do recordings because if they're on the main floor, it'll echo through the house
Right.
and blah, blah. Like, I mean, it was just like in a moment that all just
Right. Rushed in,
rushed in. And it's like, well, no,
jumped in.
yeah, like I didn't even really need all that anyway, because the reality was no.
Exactly. Exactly.
Sandy says, love it. Well, yes, it's so easy to revert to old patterns. Right. Right.
It is.
And
It is.
I said to my husband, because he walked in after that, and I said, and I was telling him about the conversation. I'm like, and he knows that I'm on that whole like, nope, no more moving lines. You know, this is it. This is
Right.
where we are. So anyway, but yeah, that's the thing. And so like, and I am fully conscious and aware of it. And I still fell into it in a moment of distraction.
Right. Right. Yeah. And that's where I find that you make the most compromise.
Mhm. It's easier to just yes, or whatever.
Right.
And I'll just-
Because you're so in just that moment of, I really just need to do this. So if this answer will get you
Get
out
you
of
away. Yes. Yes. We do that
Yep.
all the time. Yeah. So I mean, all of these things are so important to look at. I mean, and I feel like this is like it's just the top of the iceberg, right? But it's
Right.
such an important step. in
Well, and
shi-
it's like remembering how to connect and communicate at this expanded level. And if we can just start at that tip of the iceberg and get things to start shifting into a more authentic place, then that will bring about shifts for everything else within that iceberg, so to speak.
Mhm. Yeah. And it starts to break it up.
Yeah.
Because then things start to fall away. Because then you're like, okay, well, that's not even going to hold anymore. Because I'm staying authentic in this, right? That's not even going to be part of my space. I'm going to hold this space. That goes back to the original discussion of holding your space and letting anything come in as long as it accommodates your space. And you know what? I'm not saying you have to not accommodate your own space, but the question is then just do our spaces, are they compatible and do they resonate with each other? And then you
Right.
just say when it doesn't, well, then we just go our own ways. And that becomes so non-emotional, situational.
Confrontational, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
And it becomes so much
And
easier.
non-blaming.
Yeah. And it retains everyone's authenticity. It retains everyone's power within themselves,
Right.
which is the priority for all of us to accommodate within
Well,
ourselves.
and you each person retains their respect, which
Mhm.
if you come back to the namaste, you know, that's part of my honoring the divine in me honors the divine in you. And if that means we go our separate ways, that's honoring.
Right. Right. And Sandy said, and easy. Exactly. Because the easy button is what we all want to,
Right,
all we
right,
aspire
right.
to get to, right? Well, not all of us, some of us. Ultimately, my choice, right?
Right.
So, so all right. So I guess our session today, oh, there's the on. As I said that, is about having the consciousness, having the observance within ourselves
Right.
to be in that authenticity and to honor others in their authenticity and to allow both in that completion, right?
Yeah. To see with new eyes,
Yeah.
all of this.
How to do that with love and ease and fluidity, you know, flow, and to allow everybody to accomplish what is, you know, their ultimate intentions and stuff like that. Oh, that feels really nice. That feels really nice. So, all right, let's do that.
Go do that.
So we'll close our eyes, take a deep breath, open our hearts as we step out of separation back into oneness and wholeness. And we set ourselves at the vibration where that is our truth. That is from where we exist, create, and experience. All right. That actually felt good.
Yeah, it really did. That was real. In fact, I got lost out there and I was like, oh my gosh, where am I? How long have we been out there?
You know, I think that was only like 7 minutes and it felt like it was a lot longer. In fact, I came back once in the middle going, like thinking it had already been like 15 minutes and I lost track.
Right.
It
Right.
was a lot. Sandy says that was a lot. I mean, it was a lot. It felt good though. It felt like, I was like, shh, like washing all this crap off. I was like, oh yeah, get off of that. Like, get rid of this, get rid of that. And then it was like, oh, so much easier.
Yep.
So that's everybody's home play for this week, is that whole consciousness about that, be an observation about that.
Right.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
Yes.
All right, everyone.
Nice to start.
It's a great place to start. I mean, because this emanates in every direction in our lives, every
Right.
direction.
Right.
Yeah. So, yeah, so sit in that, come back and do this a couple of times. I mean, I know I will. I know I'm going to be holding this in my meditation. So,
Yes.
yeah. So, all right, everyone, have a great week. This is Angela Coulter and
Sarah Sieg, Evagnoni.
signing off with this week's Ascended World. We'll see you next time. Have a good one.